Hercules, we're back with another episode of Offside, which is our weekly podcast. But lately, the last 2 weeks, we couldn't do the weekly podcast because we were a bit off with work commitments, life commitments, things that happen. And so we're sorry, we have not been doing our job in getting you the weekly updates that we promised that you would. So apologies on that. But with that, we're back. And today there's a lot to catch up upon.
This is not our full-time job, right? This is just something we do as a passion project, but something that we hope to turn into something a bit more with your help, of course. But yeah, Dev, as you said, it's been a week of Barca again. Not the best of weeks, I would say, in terms of performances and results and even the news that are floating around. But at least it gives us a lot to talk about, right? So today we're just gonna go over the games. We had 2 games this week. Am I right? Yeah, 2 games this week. We had some news over transfers, as always happens with Barca, especially when we are approaching the winter transfer window. And then there's always some performances that you want to analyze a bit, some players that might be in the spotlight again for Barcelona. Even Flick for his first red card in La Liga, which is always a big thing and always ritual for all coaches who arrive to Spain, because it's a difficult place to be in, especially when you're a Barca coach or a Madrid coach, because then the media is always on you.
It's not been very good sportingly, to say the least. We've not been winning games. November was a bad month. Let's just admit what it was after the high of October. And then we had a win against Mallorca, which kind of made us feel good again because we won 5-1 or whatever. And then back with Betis, the same problems resurfaced. And frankly speaking, we could and should have probably lost that game. Betis deserved a lot more than the draw that they got at Villarreal. No, league never ends in December. But the fact is, we had a 9-point advantage and we blew that. And that can be costly in a Liga title race. So let's start there, Dom. Let's pick up with Betis.
Yes, Betis, I think the result was, as I said, it could have been much worse. So that's one consolation thing about the game. But that's where it stops, right? Because Betis could have won, maybe should have won. This might have been not sure if it was the worst performance of the season, but it's definitely up there, right? Because this was the game where you were outplayed. It was a close tactical game where the opposition actually had better chances. They had more control. They had a game state which favored them more. And I feel like Barca have been very poor of late in creating that game state that actually suits them more than the opposition. Now, why is that? You alluded to it, Dev, when you said that there are some issues, some flaws in Barcelona's tactics and the structure and the personnel that keep repeating themselves, right? And to me, and we kept saying this with Xavi as well, which is what worries me a lot, because the same things are happening just now that were happening a year ago, where you have these recurring issues that are not getting fixed. What does that mean for the coach and the team? It usually, at least in my mind, means one of two things, right? Number one is that the coach is unable to identify those issues, right? He doesn't see them. So that's why he's not fixing them. That's number one. The second potential reason for it might be that the coach sees them, he knows about them, but he doesn't know how to fix them. So Flick would be aware, okay, we have a high line, but no pressure. And I see this as a flaw in our system, but I don't know what to do to fix it, which is possible because the personnel doesn't always suit that way of playing. But it's also a concern because if he doesn't know how to fix it, that means that it's here to stay, at least for the foreseeable future, which is a big problem. Now, there's also a third option, which would be the Flick sees this. He sees, okay, we are struggling in this, but he doesn't recognize it as a flaw. So he doesn't think that this is something that he needs to change or something that needs his attention, which I think would be the wrong way to look at it. But whichever way you see it, it's a big problem to me because all these three options are suboptimal. At one point or the other, they will get found out. And that's what we're seeing here, Deb. We're seeing teams actually identify those flaws and then exploit them nicely in the way that it suits their teams. Teams do have tools to exploit this, and it's up to Barca to actually find tweaks to work around the flaws in the structure, because you can't have new players coming in and fixing those holes because, as we know, Barca don't have the leisure of having those new players. Now, you delve deeper into that, and you unearthed some flaws that you think are very detrimental to Barca. So let's go with that a bit.
It's the numbers, right? So let's look at the numbers from this game as well. Okay, so actually, let's start with XG, right? Barca had 0.46 the whole game compared to Betis, who had 2.87. Betis had 4 big chances, 12 total shots, 6 corner kicks. They literally gave away possession to Barca, which is what all the other teams have done. And we have seen exactly the same situation unfold against Osasuna, against Monaco, and even against the early first half of Bayern. It was a bit shaky and so on. It's a script that has been rewritten time and again, and we have seen that where the high line gets pressed, and then you have the run from deep. Everybody talks about it. You have the long balls, the second balls. We don't have aerial winners. They choke up the middle, so we can't play through the lines. So there are challenges, and this is something which is not just from this game. We've been seeing this in a lot of games lately, and the same formula comes up and the same numbers stack up from that perspective. Even if we had the money to buy the players, is it the right solution? Do you just buy players out of problem? That's not the way to build a team. That's just not how the philosophy should be. So, do we have the right players? No, but no team has the right players. No team has 22 right players. It just doesn't happen. So we also don't have it. We started the season overachieving, and now it's catching up with us, I think, and it's balancing, which is okay, which is not bad because the team will understand what it's good at, what it's not good at. But I think a few things that are not working, and what worries me the most about, we had thought that the people back from injury, as they come back, the team will become better. But that's not really what we are seeing, right? Araujo is going to come back, but will he improve the playing from the back, which is our biggest problem right now? We are not being able to play from the back at all, right? And teams have figured this out. They're pressing, they're winning that battle. They're cutting off the supply lines, and then Barca has no answers. Will Araujo solve that problem? Rafinha has been overperforming, according to me, this season, 100%. That level of finishing, and I don't think he's going to get in the next season. I may be wrong, though. We have a bunch of players who are coming in fully fit from injuries, and we are curing that. People like Pablo Torre and Ansu Fati may be on their way out because there's no space for them because there are fit players. But are the fit players performing the way the team was performing when they started the season without any of them? Probably not. And that is a problem. We are not getting the cavalry in December to come in and change guard and suddenly we'll be better because we don't have the money. We have the right players for doing that. And if we haven't been able to, how difficult would it be to suddenly make that change post-Christmas?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, Dev. So I'll start at the beginning, or rather at the end. So your last question that you just asked me, actionable things and the profile of the squad or the players that could come in potentially and fix those flaws. That's never the answer. As you said, Dev, that's never the answer. You just go into market and you buy yourself out of trouble. That's not what good coaches do. That's not what elite teams do. What we praised Flick for at the beginning of the season is exactly that. Making a system that was created to the team that the players that he had. He was playing to their strengths. I use the term profile optimization, whereas he looked at the profiles of the squad and he said, okay, this is what this team is capable of, and I will play in a way that enhances those profiles. Now, we're not seeing the same thing at the moment, and that's where Barca are struggling because all of a sudden we're playing in a way that's not really fit for our players. We see them run a lot, we see them cover huge distances, we see them go long, go vertically too much and too often, and that all of a sudden now we're not winning. And Flick himself addressed that post-Betis match. He said, okay, we were relying on long balls too much, we're not really into our game plan, we're not really playing to our strengths. So I'm glad that he recognized that as a flaw, which means that in the back of his mind, it's there, it's present now, it's all about fixing it. So how do you fix it? For example, against Real Sociedad, in that piece, I mentioned, okay, one thing Barca did not do, or they could have done or should have done, is played through Frenkie de Jong and Marc Cáceres in midfield. Instead, they went around them, they went over them because they were afraid of the high press, the man-marking press from Real Sociedad. But if you have those players in your squad who are built exactly for that situation, so Flick got it right in the team selection. He knew, okay, I need press-resistant players because I'm facing a high-pressing team. But then you need to use them. What we did, we forced Iñaki Peña to go into these long balls. I'm not sure if that was by design, or maybe just Iñaki Peña wasn't comfortable enough in his own abilities to actually find De Jong, find Casado, or he would be afraid that if he passes the ball to them, they lose the ball, that the blame is going to be on him. So maybe there's a psychological part in all of this, which is a valid point. But again, Barca need to play through their main ball handlers in those situations, because when you go long and you go into these 50-50 aerial duels with Lewandowski and whoever that is in the field or attack, you're basically risking those turnovers, and that's where teams hurt Barca the most. Because if you look at the numbers, if you look at the pass maps and the loss maps, the losses that we have in the middle of the park, they often lead to shots, meaning they're very dangerous for Barca because we can't really win those second balls. We can't really stop teams in those gegenpress situations in the middle of the park, and that's how we suffer and why we suffer. So playing through your main ball handlers, playing to your strengths is one of the ways to avoid these situations that increase variance. What do I mean by increased variance? It means just that you don't control all the variables as much as you would in a low variance situation. What's a low variance situation for Barcelona? It's playing out of the back. Why? Because you rely on your technical quality, you rely on yourself. You don't rely on 50-50 chances, but you hold your fate in your own hands. Doesn't mean it's foolproof. Losses will still happen. Sometimes a slip up will happen, a bad pass will happen, but at least you're playing to your strengths. You're playing to things that your team should be comfortable with, and that way at least you have some sense of control. Now, control is actually the second thing I want to talk about, because we often see Barca have high possession values, and when you look at the data, you think, okay, Barca actually controlled the game, they dominated the ball, just the ball wouldn't go in. But having possession does not equal being dominant on the pitch, because as we saw, Betis at one point they did press high, they did contest the ball high up the pitch, but at other times they just play in this 4-2-4 structure that kind of suffocated the middle of the pitch, and they just waited there. They let our defenders have the ball. They blocked the passing channels. They stayed compact and the safe, narrow structure defensively, and Barca couldn't do anything. So we had the ball, but we did not have the initiative. We did not have the dominance. In that sense, this kind of leads us to our main threats and how we use the players. You either somehow get them to press, or you drop the highlight. One of those things needs to happen. You can't have both the highlight and no press, because that combination, as we saw time and time again, can and will get exploited. Now, so those are the things that you have to tweak and that can be tweaked, but then you have to make a change in the system, right? Flick is someone who will die by his principles. He will not throw his place out the window, nor should he. But tweaks and evolution are always necessary for elite teams, and we see this with all big coaches. So I feel like Flick needs to do the same thing now. Obviously, we're not here to tell Flick how to do his job. I can't really come up with solutions that would improve this Barcelona immediately. That's on Flick and his coaching staff. That's what he will do much better than I ever could.
So that was about Barca, the challenges. Do read the blog if it's possible, or even this summary wasn't that bad. So hopefully that gives you some insight. And we'd love to know what you guys think about it, because you guys are watching the same game that we are, and you have basically the same understanding. It's not like that we are understanding anything different. So we'd love to know how you guys are feeling about it, and leave it in your comments or suggestions or what have you, and we'd love to engage with that. So let's talk about Dortmund and how they are. So at this moment, I think they're a bit inconsistent in Bundesliga, what I would say. Generally, Dortmund can be a handful in the Bundesliga. Haven't felt that way about them this time. They didn't do very well in the Pokal, and I think they lost to Wolfsburg, if I'm not mistaken. In the Champions League, however, they have been going good. They've got some wins, and it's felt that they will also qualify for the round 16. The only player that everybody's talking about when it comes to Dortmund is Jamie Gittens, and his ability is a winger, young player from Reading, England, and he's making all the same kind of noises that Jude Bellingham did in Dortmund a few seasons ago. And we all know how that story ended. So maybe Dortmund have their new Bellingham, or maybe he's the new Jamie. So it's what it is. But that's a player everybody's talking about, and generally Dortmund sell. We know that for reality. We have a potentially good team out there, and German teams are never easy, especially for Barca. Barca never found it easy against German teams historically in the Champions League, and the team is not in a good run of form as of this moment. We have won from 5 games, correct, as we head into this Champions League. If we lose this, will it really affect our qualification? Probably not, but it will cause damage to the confidence, and that is a problem because we now have 2 league games that are pretty important. There's also discussions around rotation. So should we deprioritize Dortmund a little bit, or do we go all in? What about Gittens? What about Dortmund overall?
Yeah, it will be a tricky game because we're playing away from home, and we've been doing that for the best part of this season, actually. We've played like 11 away games in the opening 16 or something like that. So it's tough. It's a tough schedule for a young and thin squad. And Dortmund, they've not been good away, but they've been fantastic at home, right? At home is where they actually shine. At home is where they actually beat teams. And they can go toe-to-toe with big teams as well. We saw it against Bayern as well. They played a 1-0 draw as well. So it's not a team that we should take light. Now, should we prioritize Champions League or La Liga? It's a difficult thing to say, but I think La Liga is always a priority. You know, it's nice to win the Champions League, but La Liga and domestic dominance is what Barca want to strive for every single year, right? Now, I don't expect us to win the Champions League. I don't think that we're there yet, But given our style of play, and we said this on the live yesterday as well, Dev, given our style of play, we actually do have a pretty good shot because we can beat anyone on our day, right? If we get going, we score the first goal, especially in those moments, we can steamroll even the big team. We saw against Madrid, against Bayern, we can do damage to big teams. Dortmund, just in a vacuum, they've not been the best of teams, as you said. They struggle a bit this season. They are not entirely sure on their identity either because they are a strong team, a fast team, a team that can rely on counterattacks, but they are also a team that's good on the ball. But they've struggled to implement all that correctly, and they do have a new coach and all that. So that's also a factor, which is also the thing with Barca as well. They have so much flexibility. They can play in different ways. They have different tools in their arsenal that can actually adapt to the opposition. So that's my big worry in predicting how they will play because the coach really likes that flexibility. He likes to mix things up. They play in different systems from game to game. They use different players. And that's also the thing because they do have a couple of injured players that are coming back. I think Anton is out and Sule is out as well. So how does that shape the team now? Because there's a big changes coming up. And yeah, you mentioned Gittins, and I think he is someone to watch out for. People already mentioned that he can exploit a high line. It's as simple as that. Sometimes it just boils down, can we actually track the runners properly? Because Barca have not been able to do that all the time, especially if those runners start from a deeper position. We just don't know how to react to that. And Dortmund, they do use the half spaces really well, right? So what they will do, they will have the wingers wide initially. They will access the wingers, and then they will make an inside run to the half spaces with the number 10s, and the winger and the number 10 will interact in one of two ways. One is just direct ball from the winger into the space for the number 10, or number 10 will just create the space for the winger by dragging the opposition or the markers forward, and then the winger cuts inside and then shoots on goal. So there are ways that this Dortmund side can actually exploit us. And if you look at the stats, look at the comparison, direct comparison in terms of possession and attack and defending, all that stuff, we're not really that different. Maybe if we get going, we can steamroll them. That happens sometimes to this Barca side. But however, if they are neck to neck with us, we might have problems. And I don't know that. We'll see. I think we need to win 2 of the next 3 games to guarantee our advancement into knockout stages.
So we played 5. Our
Okay.
number 3 on the table. Pool and Inter are above us. Then it's Barcelona. Played 5, won 4, lost 1, and the points are 12. So we are on 12 points.
12 points. There you go. So that means that the next 2 games.
They were
if we win
saying
the next
16 points should be good enough for you to qualify, 15 or 16 in this new format. I don't know whether that still stands or not, but that means one more win, possibly.
One more win. Yeah. And we we have Borussia Dortmund away, we have Benfica away, and we have Atalanta home.
And Dortmund and Barcelona are on the same points, 12.
So they've been performing quite well. So I wouldn't call this an easy game. I wouldn't call it like a comfortable matchup for us because despite their issues, we also have issues. So it's a trade-off. But if we win this game and win one of these next 3 games in the Champions League, in theory, it should be enough for us to actually advance, which is all we want at this point. So we'll see how that plays out. But what are your thoughts, Dev, on Borussia? How do you see that matchup playing out? Do you see it as a tricky one, or?
There was this core that was playing, and they were overplaying, and they were getting tired, and they were getting injured. And then obviously we tried to rotate a little bit, and every single game we have rotated, we have suffered. I'm not really sure Gabi is really there yet. Lamine has been a little bit off after the injury, and we have missed a few players. Like we aren't getting Fermin Lopez to score as much as he was scoring last season. Lamine Yamal also hasn't scored that many number of goals. He's been great to watch and play, but he's not troubled the scorers a lot in this season. So I'm sure he will be looking to change that discourse. So I think the player personnel and who picks up is going to make a huge impact on what happens in the game. I think if we play like we did against Betis, we can lose. Because German teams are physical and they're pragmatic. Both things that Barca are not good with, to be entirely honest. I think the chances of a win are high for us. Only because Dortmund have been so inconsistent throughout the season. I'd say that's the only reason. I personally believe that we've got what it takes to win this one and get the 15 points and qualify. But I'm not that worried, because even if we don't, I think we'll get the job done sooner or later, which is okay. I do think we got to think about this game keeping Atleti and Leganes in mind.
The team that we saw against Betis is essentially a team that we'll see against Dortmund. I think there's not much there's not much that Flick can change in terms of the Gala 11 because these are more or less our best players, I think. And yes, they're not all performing at the highest level. Some of it is fatigue, as you said, because some of them we just can't really rotate that much. We don't have the personnel to rotate and not lose out on quality. That's one of Barca's biggest flaws this season is that the squad doesn't have quality in depth to actually rotate and not lose out on that efficiency and the quality of plays. And yes, I do agree. We do have on paper we should be beating this Dortmund side. They are dangerous. They might go neck to neck with us. It's an away game. We don't know what form or shape we'll get to that game because mentality, as you said, Dev, is also very important. We've not been on a good streak. These players are not really boiling with confidence either, which has been the case at the beginning of the season when everything was going their way. And that kind of boosts their confidence. It's a circle, right? If you feel good, you play good. If you play good, you feel good. So it's up to Flick and the players to snap out of this slump, let's call it a slump, or a setback, and then get back to winning ways. So I think this team has it in them to actually wake up, so to speak, and then get back to winning ways. And if we can actually get this win the Champions League, it could spark something. We do have the quality edge, but at the same time, we've been underperforming lately. So has Dortmund, to be fair to them as well. But end of the day, as you said, I am leaning towards a Barca win nonetheless.
Always here, players. And the window is coming. So the new one is Jonathan Tah. Everybody's saying that it's done and that he will be coming in. What it means, I have no idea. Does that mean that Araujo is gone? Or does that mean that he's a rotation player? Or does that mean that Inigo is waving goodbye? There are many conjectures right now around this. But my first question was, did we even need a defender to start with, looking at all the gaps that we have in the team? And my point of view would be no. Like we could have possibly, I know he's free and all of that stuff, but you still have to pay salary. I think so. Looking at free players and salaries and all of that stuff, I think there were other positions that needed more attention in terms of where the team is at. But that's where I come from. Dom, what's your take on Jonathan Tah?
Yeah, it's difficult to say because we don't know what kind of money we're working with here. Does Barca, if we get Jonathan Tah, does that mean that we're not getting someone else, right? Does that impede a different transfer? And how much in wages is he actually going to cost us? So it's difficult for me to say. But on paper, I think we could use more depth. We have seen Inigo and Kubarsi falter a bit as well. I think I'm not sure if it's fatigue, if it's just a system that's changed a bit. But we have seen a drop in performance, well, across the board, really. You could make an argument that the whole team is suffering from the same fatigue, both mental and physical. So maybe some new blood will be good. Is this going to be a winter transfer? Right?
I think it will be summer as a free transfer. But even then, we have to clean the books and get somebody off. Does he pair up with Kubarsi or Araujo? Or I don't see Kubarsi not playing because this is Barcelona and he's Catalan. So that's not happening. So he's staying.
I think there'll be several exits come the summertime, but I was under the impression that this is going to happen in the winter, which would make sense to reinforce the team now because come the winter, you can actually plan for bigger signing or prioritize a bit more, at least on paper, in theory. But now, if we don't get him in winter time when the team is struggling so much for depth, I'm not sure. We'll see.
Araujo is not a good highline defender. We know that. Is Jonathan Tah a good highline defender?
I mean, in terms of tracking back and being just a physical presence, then yes, right? He will be someone who's more akin to Araujo than to Kubarsi, for example, or to Inigo. So in that sense, you will get a different profile with decent ball playing. Now, is he a replacement for Araujo? That was a good point that you made. It would potentially mean that we are actually fine with making a big sacrifice because we will need a big exit. And Frankie's probably going to be one of those as well. Now, if you're planning to get Leao and get more reinforcements, you'll probably need more than just one big transfer, right? So I'm guessing we could potentially be looking at Araujo departure. Now, would I trade Araujo for Tah? I wouldn't.
No, we wouldn't.
No, so it's a tricky one. But if the money is okay and it doesn't impede our other transfers, then I guess in that scenario, I would be fine because it's just depth. It's quality depth, which is fine. But if it impedes other transfers and if we have to sacrifice other players and not getting other better players by getting Tah, then I wouldn't. That's the simple but more diplomatic answer, I think.
The rumor is not going to stop. I think in Star now, there will be Rafael Leao. There will be discussions on Frankie leaving and new players coming. But fundamentally, what we can absolutely say for certain we still need help in the fullbacks. We still need somebody in the forward line, and we still need something in the heart of the midfield where we have glaring gaps right now, even now in the team. The fullback situation absolutely needs some solution. It's not that Kunde and Valde are not doing well, but they're not the right players for this Flick style of playing. If this is what Flick wants to play, it's just what it is. So we need some help there. Yes, we have been overperforming in scoring, so it might feel like we don't need a striker, but I do think we do need a 9 and so on as we go ahead, because that we'll need it sooner or later. So that's there. And then on paper, we have an excellent midfield, only it is never visible these days. So that's another challenge on what fix for. So there are profiles and situations that we possibly need to look into, and there'll be more discussions around this for sure. But Dom, any final thoughts before we wrap up this one?
No, it's going to be another fun week ahead, I think, with this Borussia team. I think if we win that game, the fans will recover a little bit, the players might recover a little bit mentally, and then hopefully that gives us a good push for the final part of this first half of the season before the Christmas break. And then we have to finish strong with Atleti and Leganes. I think those are the games that if we win, we give ourselves a good chance to actually head into the rest of the season with good feelings and actually some hope and optimism, which we need desperately at this point. But yes, guys, thank you for joining in. And yeah, as we always say, Dev, stay safe and Visca el Barça.